Hey everybody, Eric here with Spartan AutoWorks. Today we're going to make another follow-up video. It'll be a video coming out prior to this about 07 up gauge clusters. Today, this particular video is about basically 03 through 07 GMT-800 truck gauge clusters. I'm not going to go through the repair, but I'm going to give a quick overview of the issues and how to repair them. Plenty of videos on repair. First thing I'm going to say is I do a ton of these clusters every single week. Got a local car lot that always buys his trucks, and I rebuild every single cluster before they sell it. He keeps me busy enough that I don't even like doing clusters anymore. I will say there are quite a few DIY kits available on eBay, which are all great and dandy. One thing I would tell you to watch out for is the stepper motors. So these here are the X25 168s, which are older stepper motors. You can see that by the number on the stepper motor. The latest revision is X27 168. You want to use the SwissTech Jukin motor, which is the OEM motor. There's quite a few different ones on eBay, all cheap. I can tell you from a reputable dealer, they're not super expensive, but from a reputable OEM dealer, they are not as cheap as you can buy them on eBay. As for the lights, I don't go back with the base bulbs. The base bulbs are too much of a pain. And as you can see, somebody has already been in here and replaced them. The yellow base bulbs are what you're going to see in a replacement. I have seen a couple variants to the bases for different base bulbs, but blue is what you're going to get, like that one there from the factory or the original build. So what I usually do is use raw bulbs, but I try to put LEDs in most of them. I use blue LEDs. A white LED will give it a baby blue look, and you do not want that. You can do different colors, green, red, etc. They come through the background just fine. But I prefer raw bulbs or LEDs. LEDs just so that way I never have to open it back up again. So there's a few things that we're going to go over just as a Cliff Notes version of repair on these versus having to watch somebody go piece by piece on a video for the repair. First thing I will say is, since I do a lot of these, I've seen every which way the DIY person has tried to do it themselves and either done a terrible hack job or damaged the board. And I've had a lot of them brought to me that people tried and got over their head and couldn't do it. So if you are not good with soldering, find somebody that is before you attempt to repair this board, because it makes it super difficult when I have to go back and jump traces, or you have to do some kind of crazy repair because somebody's like completely damaged and burned a hole straight through the board. I've seen some pretty crazy stuff over the few years that I've been doing these, and I'm just not surprised by some of the DIY repairs anymore. But if you're good with soldering or willing to take your time to do it, you have no problem. I do recommend a solder sucker, like a heated iron solder sucker. Makes it way easier than when trying to get the motors off, which we'll talk about here in a second. On the top side of the board, there's a few things you're going to touch up for repair. This area right here at the DS19 area, all these little resistors right here, those control the prindle. There's your prindle right there. Park, reverse, neutral, drive, 1, 2, 3, prindle, PRNDL. So that will, if you have a dim prindle, that will lighten up your prindle right there. That will fix that. On this particular board, I would bet you this is out of a 03, 04 board without looking at the part number. Well, obviously, because it's got a non-digital prindle. But anyway, on these, they lose power all the time. There's another YouTube video out there that talks about repairing the actual connector right there. And I can't tell you how many phone calls I've gotten over the years that said, I did what I saw on the YouTube video and it still doesn't work. Well, maybe it worked for that particular case, but I can tell you I've never, ever, ever, ever done a repair on the actual header connector itself. It's always been over here. I'm going to point out the different components that you'll need to touch up. So, and it's so hard to do this looking through the phone, but you will reflow those, reflow these three, reflow these two big guys right here, and that will bring your cluster back up for power 99% of the time. Now, I really only see this on the diesel clusters for like 06, 07, I guess, or 05 up, whatever it is. This guy right here should be reversed on 07 or 05 and up cluster, but this guy right here, for some reason, on the MOSFET, it breaks solder right there, and you can touch it and push it, push it, and the whole board lights back up. I'll try to put, it won't be right away, but I'll try to put the power ground schematic in the comments so you know what to supply power to. One of the things I can tell you, that if you have an issue where you reflowed all this stuff, use flux. If you've reflowed all this stuff right here and nothing gets the cluster to wake back up, get yourself a pencil and use the eraser and start pushing on different components on the board till it wakes back up. They'll most of the time do that. The other thing I've seen, for some reason, I don't know why, this is a common thing that I've seen. Let me flip this over real quick. So, for some reason, I've seen quite a few vehicles that will have the pins, one of the pins down here, unsoldered, so the actual fluorescent display does not light up. So therefore hiding the mileage. I don't know why or who or where that information comes from, but I've seen it quite a few times where people have brought in boards with no mileage from cars they bought, or had no display down there, but everything else worked, and literally it was just unsoldered. I don't know if there's one person doing it, they just do it all the time to every single truck or what, but I've come across quite a few like that. So something to be on the lookout for. As we get to the back here, so you have a little bit of let's just call it insurance here. So what I see a lot is on the legs here. So here's your plastic indicators or alignments for the X27 168 replacement motor, and these here will be your 4 metal contacts that come through the board. People usually put too much heat here, and they'll burn the whole area around here and separate the trace from the board. Well, if you happen to do that, you can come here to these little tabs, or these little connector spots, whatever you want to call it, before it dips back through the board. So right there, it's, I guess, going to go to the other side of the board. So if you happen to burn the board, you could wrap a piece of metal around the leg. I usually take a piece of copper that I have, a thin gauge copper. I'll solder it to the leg and then solder it to that trace right there and then snip it off. The other ones that you really got to watch out for, so those, the ones pretty much for all your 4 gauge is really easy. Your other ones for transmission, temp, and RPM are really easy. You got some leeway there, but the ones that can be very, very, very difficult are right here for your speedometer, because you do not have any a pad to jumper it to if you burn it. You basically are going to have to follow each trace to the next spot and get yourself a small piece of copper and jumper it out that way. So you want to be very careful. Light heat on these guys right here, which is why I kind of recommend like a heated solder sucker. That way you can kind of heat it, get it, and suck it all at one time. Otherwise, just trying to use a soldering iron to heat it, and then use a manual soldering pump, or like a solder sucker pump, to come in there afterwards. Like it's almost like you can't get in there fast enough. So let me see if there's anything else we need to touch on here. Just want to make like a quick video for some of the common questions that I get. So X27 motors, you would definitely want to buy Swiss-Tech Jukin motors. The OEM replacements X27 168 will be your latest revision. So obviously X25 168 is not the latest revision. Yellow base bulbs means somebody's already been in there. Blue base means nobody's ever touched it. You can see like this on this solder job, whoever has been in here trying to replace these base bulbs. And there's a secret to doing the base bulbs. They just take more time, so I hate doing the base bulbs. I literally do raw bulbs. Raw tin bulbs are LEDs, and like I said, LEDs are my preference because then basically you should never see a failure in essence. And if I do get time, I will mark, or maybe I'll do another video that shows what side's the positive side, which side's the negative side for the contact for the bulbs, so that way you can just follow the video when you go to solder them in. Makes it kind of easy. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Like I said, I've never done any header repair ever. I mean, maybe once or twice, but nothing sticks out that I've ever had to do it. Like I said, there's your Prindle control. Like I said, everything in this area here will be the lack of power. So if you have a board that doesn't have power, you're usually going to find, and it looks like somebody's already tried to touch these up, and I'm looking at through the camera here, so it's hard to say. This board got sent in from somebody, and I literally just pulled it open and said, you know what, I made a video for the other one. Let me knock this one out before I get started on this. And like I said, one of the other things you will see too is some of the DIY kits have the wrong bulbs. I've actually seen some that are real tall and way bigger that are jammed into a base and basically melt the base. I've seen that a few times as well. So anyway, like I said, let's see if I can do this again. And I can't even see my hand. So right here, you'd solder these, solder all this. You make sure you solder these two guys, and that should bring your board back up for power. Again, Prindle is going to be these right here, the 7 right there, and then that's pretty much it. And like I said, the only other thing I've noticed, I've seen quite a few of these, so I'm just pointing it out there just in case you come across one. But on the edges here, they'll unsolder those, and it will kill the fluorescent display. So just keep an eye out for that if you have one of those. I had a guy too that another car lot that thought if he would break this out that I would just take his word for mileage, and I swapped information from one board to another board, and his mileage was completely inaccurate than what he was trying to tell me. So stuff to be on the lookout for. Make sure you buy. My supplier doesn't sell to the public, only to businesses, so I can't sell you those or give him your information, unfortunately. But like I said, there is a lot of good reputable dealers out there that do sell lights and motors. Just make sure you buy from somebody that knows what they're selling, knows what they're doing, not just selling crap, because you really don't want to do this twice. I like to do them once. They're really, I don't know, they're just not fun anymore. Used to enjoy them, but not anymore. Maybe if you need assistance with yours, we definitely, rebuild them all the time. But, it's definitely a DIY project as long as you're good with soldering. If you're not good with soldering, find somebody who is. Save yourself the hassle of messing up a board and costing yourself tons of money. They're really not that difficult, but you got to be good with soldering. And these cheap soldering irons, definitely don't recommend it. Can't really control the heat with them. You definitely need a nice soldering iron, or at least not the cheapest of the cheap, the 99-cent one you get off eBay or something like that. You definitely need a decent soldering iron to control the heat. And like I said, a solder sucker that's got iron built into it works best. You can get it off there, and, suck them all out and have this whole thing rebuilt in 15-20 minutes. I've done so many, it's almost monotonous at this point, but those are all the common points. Those are all the common questions, because the most common thing I get is when people call and say, I rebuilt the cluster and it still doesn't power up. What's it going to take to get it fixed? Really easy to do yourself. It's just, you got to know what to solder. Those are the most common. Not saying you're going to see it all, you could be the odd person out, but for the most part, that is what we see pretty much on every single board. And this is an 0304 board. And yeah, so if you have any questions, comment below. This will be kind of an addendum to the first video we put out for the 07 up MOSFET issue. Also too, I will say, if you have a Sunfire and some other vehicles like some Buicks, early 2000s Buicks and Buicks, Sunfires and some other stuff. We'll also, Monte Carlos, I think Impalas. I don't know. There's some variations on what boards used what, but there's a few other clusters that do take these X25 168 stepper motors as well. And so you can use it to rebuild those as, those clusters as well. I don't have tutorials on the things we see on those because you just don't see those as often. And we're more geared toward truck people. So it's been a minute since I've had to rebuild a Sunfire or a board for like a Monte Carlo, I think is what they are, or maybe Impala. But one thing I will say about those is the actual leg goes through the board a little bit deeper. So these are real easy to get out. The other ones are a little bit more difficult. So you definitely got to put some heat on the other ones, and you can definitely do some damage if you don't know what you're doing. But other than that, 03 through 07 Classic, GMT-800, those are all the tips and tricks that you need to know in order to repair the board yourself. Like I said, we're not going to go into step-by-step, plenty of videos like that on YouTube. But if you're looking for an overview of what's going on, there is the answer. Until next time.